Hello. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope everything going all right with you today. Well, um, today I want to give you a story about. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it. Um, it's going to be about a history lesson about flooded towns in the past and how it was moved by economically and racially, and how the past shows why certain communities are experiencing things in the present. And how it was done was so maliciously was wrong. To do this to a group of people when you have envy, jealousy, hatred, and God knows what else. But I'm going to show you this video, a little bit of this video, and
a powerful combination of checking and card pay. Timeless. But what if I told you this beauty hides a secret? What if, beneath those gentle waves, there were streets, homes, schools, and shops, the remains of an entire community that once thrived? This is not a myth, and it is not a rare occurrence. Across the United States, more than 200 vibrant towns built, owned, and sustained by African Americans were deliberately wiped off the map. Their land was seized, their buildings were torn down or simply left to drown under newly constructed lakes. Reservoirs and dams. The official explanation was always Progress Public Works, flood control, electricity. But behind the blueprints and the political speeches, there was something else, an unspoken determination to erase these communities from history. These towns were more than just dots on a map. They were the result of grit, resilience, and a dream of independence after generations of slavery. In the decades after the Civil War, Black Americans who had been denied every opportunity built spaces where they could be safe, where their children could learn, and where their hard work could turn into generational wealth. Many succeeded beyond what anyone expected. They opened businesses, ran schools, cultivated farmland, and created thriving economies that rivaled those of their white neighbors. But success did not go unnoticed. Resentment grew in the shadows. People who could not accept the sight of formerly enslaved men and women surpassing them in prosperity and influence began to look for ways to undermine that progress. And they found powerful allies in the laws, in the courts, and in government agencies. Using eminent domain laws and massive infrastructure projects, officials seized land from black families, often offering little or no compensation. Whole neighborhoods were uprooted. Churches and schools that had taken decades to build were abandoned. Then came the flooding. Once the water rose, all that remained were memories and, in time, even those began to fade. Today, families picnic by the shorelines of these man-made lakes. Boats glide over the same waters that cover the streets where children once played, and most visitors have no idea what lies beneath. This is not just about what was lost, it is about what we were never told. It is about erasure on a scale so vast that it has shaped the economic and cultural landscape of America for generations. In this video, we are going to dive beneath the surface literally and figuratively to uncover the truth about these hidden histories. We will explore the stories of the towns, the people, and the forces that conspired to make them disappear. If you believe history should be told in full, not just the parts that are comfortable, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next. Together, we can bring these buried stories back into the light. When freedom finally came at the end of the Civil War, it did not arrive as a neatly wrapped gift. For millions of African Americans who had endured generations of enslavement, the promise of liberty came without land, without wealth, and without the security that most Americans took for granted. Yet from the ashes of that injustice, they began to build. They took what little they had, skills learned under oppression, traditions passed down in secret, and a determination that could not be broken, and started to create something entirely new. In small pockets across the country, they founded communities where they could live without the constant fear of violence, where their children could be educated, and where their hard work could bear fruit for future generations. The years following emancipation were a time of intense creativity and resolve. Freedmen and women understood that survival was not enough. They needed to thrive if their children and grandchildren were to have a different life. They purchased land, often pooling resources with neighbors to buy larger plots. They built modest homes at first, using wood they cut themselves or bricks they made by hand. Soon, those homes were joined by churches that doubled as meeting halls and schools. Education became a cornerstone of these new towns, because knowledge was power. And for people who had been denied the right to read or write, every lesson carried revolutionary weight. Businesses began to take shape along dusty main streets. A blacksmith shop run by a skilled craftsman might sit next to a general store owned by a local family, which in turn might be down the road from a tailor's shop or a cafe. Many of these businesses served both black and white customers, proving that the quality of goods and services did not depend on the color of one's skin. Farmers grew crops that not only fed their families, but could be sold for profit at nearby markets. Some towns even formed their own banks, lending money to residents to help them expand their farms or start new enterprises. The sense of self-reliance was not just economic, it was cultural and spiritual. These communities fostered a deep sense of belonging. Everyone knew each other's names and families. Neighbors looked after one another's children. When a home was damaged by a storm, the community rebuilt it together. Sundays were filled with the sound of choirs, and weekdays buzzed with the activity of classrooms and small shops. In a time when the wider world was hostile to their progress, these towns became sanctuaries of dignity and hope. In places like Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, later known as Black Wall Street, and Eatonville, Florida, success was undeniable. Greenwood boasted luxurious hotels, theaters, and a bustling business district that rivaled those in much larger cities. Eatonville thrived as one of the first self-governing all-black municipalities in the United States. These towns were living proof that, given the opportunity, African Americans could not only match but surpass the economic achievements of many white communities, and that truth made them targets. The prosperity of these communities stood in direct contrast to the false narratives used to justify centuries of oppression. For those invested in maintaining a strict racial hierarchy, the rise of black towns was not simply inconvenient, it was threatening. White neighbors who had once dismissed the idea of black success now found themselves competing with it. This competition bred resentment. And resentment, when mixed with the political and legal systems of the time, became a dangerous force. Jim Crow laws and discriminatory practices soon emerged to keep black prosperity in check. Banks outside these communities refused loans to black applicants, hoping to limit their growth. Segregation laws kept them out of certain markets and restricted access to public services. Land that had been carefully cultivated for decades was targeted by predatory speculators and local officials who sought to take it through legal loopholes. Still, the people in these towns adapted. They built parallel systems, their own schools, their own businesses, their own networks of trade, and continued to rise despite the odds. It is important to understand that this progress was not accidental. It was the result of deliberate choices made by people who refused to accept the limits imposed on them. They valued education as a pathway to freedom, entrepreneurship as a shield against exploitation, and community solidarity as their greatest source of strength. These values were woven into daily life, passed down through generations, and defended fiercely whenever they were challenged. Yet history shows us that such determination, while admirable, was not always enough to protect what had been built. As these towns grew wealthier and more influential, they became targets for forces far more organized than local prejudice. political leaders, business interests, and even government agencies began to view these thriving black communities as obstacles to their own agendas. Sometimes it was about land that was suddenly deemed valuable for industry or development. Sometimes it was about dismantling a symbol of black achievement that challenged the status quo. The groundwork for the tragedies that would follow was laid in these years of progress. The very success that made these towns special also made them vulnerable. They had proven that freedom could be more than a word on paper. It could be lived, and it could flourish, but in a society still deeply divided by race. That flourishing was seen by some not as a shared national victory, but as a threat to be managed, contained, or erased. What happened next? The violence, the displacement, the flooding of entire towns cannot be understood without first knowing what was lost. These communities were more than lines on a census form. They were homes where parents tucked their children in at night, schools where young minds opened to new possibilities, streets where neighbors exchanged greetings and goods, and places where dreams were not only imagined but pursued. To erase them was to erase decades of hope, ambition, and achievement. And that is exactly what happened. The lakes and reservoirs we see today, tranquil and inviting, conceal not only buildings and streets, but also the stories of people who believed in a better future and worked tirelessly to make it real. Their legacy deserves more than to be forgotten beneath the water. It deserves to be told, remembered, and understood, because only by knowing the full truth can we begin to grasp the weight of what was taken. In the years when these communities were finding their footing and beginning to flourish, the progress they achieved did not happen in the shadows. It was visible to anyone who cared to look the neatly kept streets, the hum of commerce in the marketplaces, the proud faces of children in freshly pressed school clothes walking to class each morning. For the residents, these signs of growth were a source of pride, proof that the sacrifices of the first generation after emancipation had not been in vain. But for many white neighbors living just beyond the borders of these towns, those same signs were interpreted through a lens clouded by prejudice and fear. The idea that formerly enslaved people could match, and in some cases surpass, their own levels of prosperity clashed with beliefs that had been instilled over centuries. In a society built on the assumption of racial hierarchy, black success was not simply unexpected, it was, to some, intolerable. This resentment often began quietly. It might be whispered over fences, exchanged in hushed conversations at general stores, or muttered in private gatherings. But as the prosperity of these black towns became more evident, the resentment grew louder and more organized. In some places, white residents withdrew their business from black-owned establishments, attempting to choke off the flow of revenue. In others, they used political influence to pass ordinances or create zoning laws that restricted the expansion of these communities. It was not enough for them to have their own neighborhoods and businesses. They wanted to ensure that black communities remained limited in scope and ambition. The hostility could also be personal, manifesting in acts meant to intimidate and remind black residents that their position in society was still considered precarious. Families who had worked tirelessly to pay off their land might suddenly find their property lines challenged, their deeds questioned, or their tax assessments raised to unaffordable levels. White landowners nearby could file frivolous legal claims, forcing black families into court battles that drained their resources. Even small, such as harassment at markets or deliberate damage to crops and livestock, served as constant reminders that the success of these communities was under scrutiny. And then there were the moments when resentment exploded into violence. Across the country, there were instances where rumors or false accusations against a black individual served as the spark for larger attacks. Entire neighborhoods could be burned in a single night, homes reduced to ashes, businesses looted beyond repair. These eruptions of violence were often excused or overlooked by local authorities, reinforcing the message that black prosperity could be undone at any moment and that there would be no justice for those who lost everything. For many survivors, the trauma was not just in the destruction itself, but in the knowledge that the very systems meant to protect them were either indifferent or complicit.
So, that just gives you an introduction of why what I'm about to show you. They deliver this purposely. But for a bunch of people that they say is lazy and shiftless and ignorant, how they was able to do something like that? How were they able to build 200 black towns? But yet you say lazy and shiftless. There was no reason for them to do this. So blacks want to have their own. But you see the insecurity, that they had to be insecurity to show superiority over people, use certain laws and codes to keep them from accessing things because they didn't want to compete. Think about that for a second. But the result of this, as I'm showing you, I'm going to show you what's going. So you said that was just the past. But this past never been recompensed. This past was never just, this past was, made right in the eyes of the Most High God. So people thought they got away with it. Centuries, time after time, centuries after centuries. But I'm going to show you, just because no one determines the time when justice has to take place. And this wasn't done to black people. This wasn't done by the ancestors. This was done by the Most High through retribution because what they've done. And it has not stopped. So I'm about to show you what's the latest going on. I'm going down the line and show you in different parts of the country why, because of their ignorance, because of what they've done, this is what it results. This is Eastern Kentucky.
We knew it was going to rain, and heavy, that night.
One of those things, you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, it's going to flood.
As I was on duty, I got the first national weather alert for the area of aerial flooding. Well, I get up, I was like, has it even raining? I was like, I'm going to go over here and check the river. We have a river gauge on the side of the building over here on Main Street. So I was like, I'll go check the river. I checked the river, we have 7 feet of water at 2 a.m. This is 2 a.m. Ordinarily 2 feet. So we're at 7 feet.
I could hear it raging, and my old house had been leaking a little bit, and I heard it start up pouring. So I got up and set buckets and pans.
After I had went upstairs, we heard a big loud crash against the house. It kind of felt like an earthquake. And that's when the foundation blew out in the back of the home, and then the water filled up my basement. We got about 10.5 feet of water in less than 10 minutes. I mean, it was fast. It came in, it was like ocean waves outside.
Part of the story is I was moving out. I was buying my first house. I'd been saving the last 5 years, and I actually kept trying to buy this house because I grew up in McRoberts, and my family lives right up the road, and I knew all my neighbors, and my sons lived here for 3 years. And I made this post about what a good home this had been and how important it had been to us, and it had gotten us through a pandemic. And so finally, I ended up falling asleep around 2 a.m. And we had an air conditioning unit going upstairs, and I was tired, I fell asleep, and about 2:20, all those alerts kept coming through on my phone. Mine kept coming through in Spanish, so I didn't know what they were saying.
About 1:30, next door neighbors started knocking on my door and told me that I need to get out, that the floodwaters was already in the backyard and it was raising quick. So I had 2 little dogs, 2 little Jack Russells. So I said, okay. I said, can you help me with my dogs? And they said, yeah, So he got one dog, and I got the other dog. And by then it was about 2 o'clock, and it went from about 100 foot from my house to I was wading water up to my knees.
It came up so fast. We have goats, chickens. We have a potbelly pig. We lost
6 goats.
6 goats. We lost half our goats.
When we saved the pig,
And that was probably a sight to see. She's
Yeah.
well over 200 pounds, closer to 3 probably. We folded up a tarp and put under her belly. And each of us got on the side of her, floating her out.
we had to float her out. I couldn't let her drown.
Yeah, we had to try to save her, but
She was
Mechanics have to upcharge you. We don't make money out of oil
Next town.
changes and tire rotations. My buddy says this gives
A state of emergency issued for the entire state of Missouri. Governor Parsons signed the order just hours ago, and he's already on the ground in northwest Missouri where the devastation has spread.
And Brad, the surge of water is moving downstream, and this really tells the story here. Yesterday, our Amy Anderson was in White Cloud, Kansas, showing you images of people stopped by flooded roadways. Meteorologist Brett Anthony was in St. Joe, where the water was well outside of its banks and full of debris from upstream. Fast forward now to today, and all of that water is moving into these communities here into the south. Now, we know the levee has overtopped near the town of Winthrop, Missouri. Winthrop, Missouri is also under an evacuation order. Stephanie Kaiser is live as close to that town as we can be tonight. Stephanie. Yeah, we're in Atchison, Kansas. This is as close as we can be to Winthrop, Missouri. I want to point your attention over here to the Highway 59 bridge that would connect us over to Winthrop. Tonight, that bridge is closed. The riverfront is flooded and water is rushing by us. Most people in Winthrop have left the town by now as the water trickled in this afternoon.
This is heartbreaking, I can tell you that.
This afternoon, Mary Ann Higley was busy packing up her mom's house and getting her to safety. And this is the third time.
Third time, yeah, that we've moved her out.
She says if the house floods this time, they won't be back.
It's devastating. And she'll be 80 years old.
Hours mattered today. This morning, there was no water here, a stark difference from this afternoon. Here's video from Chopper 5 as it flew over Winthrop. The water rose quickly and people were asked to evacuate. Just a mile down the road, Travis Bowen watched as water surrounded his house.
We was hoping it wouldn't, because we worked so hard to get this place built up and everything, and but like I said, what are you going to do?
He says he sat here and watched the levee breach this morning. To get everything out of there?
Yeah, we got all our necessities out of it.
Bowen says by the end of the day, it will probably be inside his house. A devastating blow since he just paid it off, but he is keeping his chin up.
I'm not going to let it get me down. I got to, take one day at a time. I can always rebuild.
Now, everyone we spoke with today did have a place to go, but the water will continue to rise here. The river isn't expected to crest until Friday or Saturday, so a long road ahead for a lot of people here in Winthrop. We're live in Atchison. Stephanie Kaiser.
Just got on the ground here in Vermont. We're heading to southern Vermont from Burlington, where the big problems so far have happened from this potentially catastrophic flash flooding event. Not only you're seeing the water flooding on the roads, but you're seeing, as you drive by, small streams overflowing in their banks, rivers rising as well, threatening towns. There are towns already isolated because of water over the roads and slides as well. Numerous highways and roads here in Vermont are already shut down, and more rain is on the way. This, unfortunately, is the scene throughout southern Vermont. Streams, tiny. Most days you would never even notice they're there, usually. Trickles, now a raging torrent, closing Highway 103. Trying to make our way down to Londonderry, but we keep getting cut off because of what you see here. Water over the roadways as well as landslides that have wiped away parts of roads. There are towns that are isolated from this very unusual and what could be a catastrophically historic flood event for the state of Vermont. So we made it into the heart of Londonderry, and it is bad. There is a lot of water, several feet of water, sitting right here through the center of town. It's flooded into businesses and some low-lying areas, some homes, cars submerged, as you see right here. Just so much water. People comparing this to 2011 Irene. It was a tropical storm by the time it reached this part of the country, caused a lot of damage, a lot of catastrophic flooding. And this is exactly what people remember. Roads covered, washed away, towns flooded, homes and businesses flooded as well. What is this like?
This is crazy. We've lived here for quite a while, and this was Irene, I remember, but some people are saying this is
worse than Irene.
Worse than Irene. I mean, at least here, and other places maybe not, but here, I think it definitely might be.
Why is that? Like, why do you guys say? Because, I mean, Irene was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. I mean, we drove through over by your parents' house, and it wasn't as high as it was Irene.
It was close.
It was close,
but up here seemed to take it harder.
Yeah, they got a lot
compared to Manchester,
more
because I know
here
Manchester,
than Manchester.
the level water line like it did up here.
What's been the most dramatic thing you're seeing? Just this main street just completely
flooded, but the stores have taken it 2 or 3 different times in the past 10 years. Since Irene, I don't remember what year Irene was.
In Ludlow, the pharmacy, I'm a pharmacist, and the pharmacy that I work at they got hit really bad with Irene, and we got pictures of our store this morning, and we have water in there right now. There's another pharmacy down the street, and it looks like it's right across from that Okemo Mountain sign in that green building plaza there, and I think it looked like it's just
gone.
The thing with Irene, you knew it was coming. Did you guys?
Yeah, I had no idea. I got up and was getting ready to go to work this morning, and his mom called and said Ludlow's flooded out. And I'm like, what?
It was 5:30 this morning.
Yeah, and I started looking, and I was texted my boss. I was like, I don't think I can get to work this morning, because I looked it up, and they had all the roads closed going in, and there was no way to get to work.
So even on the side roads, all the culverts, took it out.
Everybody, I talked to one of the people that I work with, and he was like, I had no idea. I got up and looked out the window, and I couldn't believe it, because he lives right in Ludlow, and he's like, I'm not going outside today. So
this creek, now river, still rushing through the town of Weston, Vermont. But you really can't tell how bad it was until you look at this road. You can see the power and what it did. Buckling, making waves, wiping away this road right here in the middle of the town of Weston, Vermont.
Yeah, Irene was pretty similar. Water levels are definitely much higher with this rainstorm. You know, not in the hurricane season, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, this is we saw this 12 years ago.
So that's Vermont.
Start the cleanup and recovery process. We had several cities that were isolated. Fremont, Nebraska, for example, was really you couldn't get there by road for about 48 hours, and so now people can drive to and from Fremont. The city of Columbus was a peninsula. That's gotten better. Waterloo was another community that was isolated. We can get there now by road. So with these water levels dropping, we're seeing more people returning to their homes. The number of people in our shelters is going down, but there's still going to be a long road of cleanup left ahead of us.
Tell us who is feeling the toll of this the most. I mean, we've just seen and we've spoken about what the farmers are dealing with. Give us the bigger picture there.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly our farmers and ranchers are feeling a lot of the damage here. We estimate about $400 million in cow-calf losses, about $440 million in crop loss. We've had over 2,000 homes, over 340 businesses damaged, probably about $85 million worth of homes and businesses damaged. And then our infrastructure has really taken a lot of the heat. About $439 million, we think, there. At one point, 20% of our roads were impacted, our state highways, that is. And we've still got about 200 miles of highways that will not be usable until they can be fixed. And just to give your listeners an impact here is over 85% of our counties have declared an emergency. This, like I said, is the most widespread.
And Governor, how long is it going to take for things to get back to normal?
Well, this is going to take many months to recover from it. You know, these major infrastructure projects like the roads I mentioned, we've got 16 bridges out. This is all going to take time to fix. We want to move as quickly as and that's why our team worked very quickly with FEMA to get a disaster declaration in place. We were able to submit a disaster declaration on Tuesday, and FEMA got to that to the White House very quickly, and we got the disaster declaration yesterday. So that will help us by tapping into those resources both for public and individual assistance. And I know the resilience of the Nebraska people here. We've got a drive going on right now to raise money called Nebraska Strong. We're going to rebuild even bigger and better than before, and we'll get through this together.
In the Kings community of North Vicksburg, Mississippi, friends and relatives are helping.
Hold on, I ain't gonna show you that one. But I just wanted to show you, this is what happened when you don't pay reparations. This is what should happen when you don't do the right thing. Generations later, the storms is gonna come. Storms come. Remember them black towns that they flooded out?
Why am I drawn to the wild? Why have I been looking for the
180,000 people? It was the American. It wasn't happening in big cities, but in the forgotten corners of the countryside. Across the nation, small towns are vanishing. Schools are empty. Churches are locked. Main streets are boarded up. These aren't just ghost stories. This is the reality of rural America in 2025. Today, we reveal 10 American towns that are disappearing before our eyes. Each one a powerful symbol of decline, abandonment, and survival. From toxic disasters to economic collapse, this is a haunting journey through what was and what's left. Once a lively coal mining town, Centralia is now barely more than a name on a map. In 1962, a fire was accidentally lit in a coal seam beneath the town, and it never went out. Over the decades, poisonous gases seeped from the earth, roads cracked open, and sinkholes swallowed homes. By the 1980s, most of Centralia's residents were evacuated. The government declared it uninhabitable. Today, fewer than 10 people remain, defiant, living above the flames. Smoke still rises from the ground, and the town has become a bizarre tourist site for the curious. Pitcher was once a booming mining hub, producing over half the lead used during World War I. But success came at a deadly cost. Toxic waste piles called chat were left all over town. Children grew up with lead poisoning. The ground was unstable, entire neighborhoods threatened by sudden collapse. By 2006, Pitcher was declared unfit for habitation. A devastating tornado in 2008 was the final blow. Today, it's a toxic wasteland with eerie reminders of life, street signs, rusted swings, and forgotten memories. Gary was built by U.S. Steel and once housed 180,000 people. It was the American dream, strong unions, good jobs, thriving communities. But when steel jobs disappeared in the 1970s and 1980s, so did the people. White flight, crime, and neglect followed. Today, Gary's population is less than 70,000. Thousands of homes stand abandoned. Schools, churches, even theaters are left to decay. It's a city frozen in decline, once powerful, now a warning. Cairo sits at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. It was once a key port, full of wealth and promise. But decades of racial tension, civil unrest, and failed leadership pushed people away. Businesses shut down, homes fell into disrepair, and no new investment came. From a peak population of 15,000, Cairo now has fewer than 1,700 residents. It's a city that feels like a ghost town, haunted not by the supernatural, but by broken systems and lost opportunities.
Remember I mentioned in one of my videos, Cairo, Illinois? Now you see what I was talking about. So I wasn't just ranting and raving. Just somebody said, that just guy just ranting and raving. You hear what happened. And this is continually what happened. When we don't come together as a country and we put racial and political and environmental things against because different groups of people, this is the curse of it. This is the curse what happened. This is America. Thinking that once we suppress, this is generational. That the generations done this from past generations, and they never, repent. They never make it right before the people, like in those towns that were throughout the country, with 25 black towns. And we're not gonna pay for it. We're not going. That's just the past. Okay, you're right. That's the past. But look what's happening in the present, because you won't recompense. You see how the towns going empty. Look at what America. Look at what America's doing. She's empty now. Cairo, Illinois could have been a production area if they didn't have no racial tension. So when they drove the people out, look what happened. All the industry. But so here they talk about having white towns. But if it was a town full of white people, why did they not last? People fled. It was just supposed to be just for white people. Why did it not thrive? You ever thought about that? That a diversity of people make the greatness of town. And there's even evidence showed that when people work together and come collude and help the other, a town can success. Town can bring in money. Town can bring in tourism and everything. But there's some places in America, like these towns, that would not hold on to their culture of racism and antisocial structure, because they don't want to change. So in effect, they will die out and be like these towns, small towns. And it hurts their children that don't want to come back because there's no opportunity. Their population dropped down. So they flee out. So you flee out, what happens? Nobody wants to come back because there's nothing there to offer. But having been a diverse people from generation to generation, none of these towns would be in this when it comes to the abandoned towns, would be the way it is. If they were to make it right with the descendants of those former slaves, none of this would have happened. And we would look at it as a color, none of this stuff would happen. But they would not repent. They would hold on to this. So therefore, innocent people, some who are white, had to pay the price generations later. They are paying for what them people back in the 20s and did the stuff in the 30s, putting out them black towns. Now their children and grandchildren have to pay for the cost they have done in these little towns. Because a lot of these little towns next to these towns had black people in them. And they flooded out. But look what happened. They thought they could get away with it, that keep doing what they're doing. But you see what happened. Now the blacks caused to lose their life and up and relocate. Now, centuries, decades later, this is what happened. And then when black Americans decide to bring this to the forefront, you got these people jealous and say, no, that's just the past. We're going to erase this. We're going to erase whatever you've done. But just because you erased it, doesn't mean it's going away. So now you feel the retribution. I told you, it don't have to be nothing but violence. But it has to be what's made was right. Not just an apology, but payments, and make it do it right. The farmers in different parts of the country wouldn't have done it if they did this to the black farmers. If farmers was farmers. You have black farmers getting harassed in different parts of the country. You have black farmers, so now the white farmers can't get what the black farmers get. So therefore the whole industry is suffering. Because of insecurity, jealousy. And they don't want America to thrive. Each individual native to this land. The black people are just a native land to the white people. So If the black farmers can't survive, the white farmers can't survive. And guess what? The elements took out the things. Not only, but this time it was not just the elements, because they can recover from the elements. Now, what about administration? Wait a minute. You did, when the black farmers came and asked for something, you told them no. You pulled their leg. So you see what happened? The proof is right there. Towns going into ghost towns. Look at what they've done to stop other people. That's why, to my fellow black Americans, if God ever gave us reparation, some of us would have to leave. Because the same spirit that what they did to the ancestors of these people, they would do the same thing. In fact, they'll figure out a way to sabotage you again. Once God put it on their heart. That's why I said, if we ever get reparations, leave the country. Because just like the blacks before, they sabotage them. They find ways to take it away from them. You have to get far away from them. If God, the Lord ever leaves reparation, leave and build up your own. Maybe in a different part of the country. It may not be Africa. Because it's going down. You see it. Not saying that other events can happen in other places. But you don't, at least you will prosper like your descendants did in this land. But too bad, this land never said, we're sorry. Not only say that we're sorry, they did like the pharaohs of the day of the Hebrews in Egypt. They're going to harden up their heart. I'm not sorry. That's just the past. Why don't you start complaining? Pick yourself out of the bootstrap. You N-words. But how did a bunch of lazy, incompetent, non-educated people done this, people? And they told us to the whole world, black people didn't contribute a thing. We were over them. They just taught you was just a slave. This is what they done. But they would not tell this to history because they want to leave this out. They don't want your kids, future kids who are black, to learn this. And other kids to learn this. And other people to learn this. Because why would they want it? Because they upswing the way they have been taught to see different groups of people in this country. Or we're going to give them a little bit of success. What we want determine, what we want teach them. But they don't want to teach you. So as a result of it, guess what happened? This is so you don't want to do what's right? Boom. It's going to hit generation after generation after, and the storm's going to keep stopping. Every time they build up another storm, going to knock it down. Why? Because what they done. In the beginning, see what they've done in the past, and they never did what's right. We've been trying to tell them. We showed them in the Word. We showed them in other forms. They thought we crazy. They thought you insane. You make us up. You being prejudiced. You being racist. Now explain this. Got to bring it forth to show them. This is the reason why America can't be great again. And it was struggle, and continue town. That's just the 5 towns. But there's more. I'm gonna make a second video. They done this. They don't want the people to know the truth. They don't want the children to know the truth. Children of all races to know the truth. That the evil that they done, they never said that. Why did you make this right before these people? Because we couldn't stand their skin. We couldn't stand what God put on their body. So we had to think that we had to program our mind to think that, yeah, they're just the people that they were just the scenery. Yeah, we had to teach them all these things. We had to be microaggression over them. Why? Because they feared that this was going to happen. But the black people already proved how smart they are. Sometimes the white people trying to figure out how the way they did it. Ain't that funny? You subhumanize the caste system of the people, then come back to the same people. How do they do that? Don't they do that to this day? Don't they want to take black people inventions a day? So they can and keep it and tell it down the phone that they did it? Some of them want to do that. They want to keep perpetuating things. They don't want to share knowledge and write for its history, then give credit to the people that do it. No. They want to keep it according to the complexion of a skin. And that these people come that can genetically come from Africa, from the land of Africa with animals and everything, they couldn't possibly do this. But history showed that they did. History showed over in Africa they did. They just don't want to teach that in their schools. But one day the young people will find out. White kids gonna find out. Asian kids gonna find out. South Asian. Everybody gonna find out. So that's the reason why we are in the condition of it today. From that past in this land, that's why. So now they're reaping the curse of what they done to black people. There you have it. But that was generations ago. Doesn't matter. When justice is wrong, injustice is injustice. And the justice never been repaid. It's been ignored. So now it comes to visit at your doorstep. We don't know when is it going to come, but we know that it's coming in previous times. And you see how the storms and weather get worse? You think they will listen to us now? Think about it. All right then, ladies and gentlemen, take care, be blessed. See you on the next video.